What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We haven't had a draft like this in a very long time. Let's check this out.
The 2025 NFL Draft is quickly approaching, and over the course of a 3-day span, hundreds of young men's lives will change forever as dreams will become a reality.
Yeah, literally a week away, man.
And each and every NFL team enters the draft with one common goal in mind, and that's to improve the roster enough to eventually win a Super Bowl.
Facts.
And as simple as that idea is, it's an incredibly difficult task to accomplish. And for as exciting of a time as the NFL Draft is, it's an incredibly stressful weekend for NFL teams as they navigate the board to try and improve their roster. Some years are easier than others, as the 2024 class was absolutely loaded, and it was a common belief that the first three picks were going to be Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May. And you can even throw in Marvin Harrison.
My favorite thing about this draft this year, though, is that it's just too unpredictable outside of the number one overall pick. I guess you can say, like, the top three picks are kind of predictable, but there's still a very good chance that the Browns draft Travis Hunter. So
each of the top three teams need.
And I could see the Browns trading back up to draft Shedeur too if they do somehow do that.
The draft is incredibly unique because after the Titans presumably select Cam Ward number 1 overall, nobody knows anything. And it's also why the 2025 draft is unlike any of the past several drafts. I know you may be thinking, well, what about the 2022 draft when there was just one quarterback selected in the first 2 rounds? I think the 2025 draft is a lot different than that draft too, because despite the lack of quarterbacks in that class, there was a lot of high-end talent within the 2022 draft, where there's not a lot of blue-chip talent in the 2025 class. And this is what GMs have called a meat and potatoes draft. And in today's video, we're going to break down what makes this class so unique and what could transpire throughout the course of the 2025 draft. Now let's begin.
Alright.
And we are starting today's video by discussing the team that has the number 2 pick in the Cleveland Browns. I am a firm believer that the draft starts at number 2 overall, and obviously that's not a hot take at this point in time, but over the past month and change, Adam Schefter has said that the Browns are taking Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall, and they are taking Abdul Carter, and most recently, as April 7th, Travis Hunter is, quote, the more likely pick for the Browns.
He's been the favorite these last couple days.
And you can make a legitimate case for all 3 players to go to Cleveland. I personally don't think Shedeur Sanders would elevate the Browns.
Do y'all think that they give Kenny Pickett a shot, bro? Because he's the only quarterback that's at least decent on that roster right now that's capable of playing. Because Deshaun Watson, you know, he retore his Achilles, so he's not going to be able to play the whole 2025 season. So do y'all think that they give Kenny Pickett a shot, or they either trade back up to get Shedeur, or they draft Jackson Dart, Jalen Moore in the second round?
To another level,
because I don't see them drafting Shedeur number 2 overall.
Baltimore with the season on the line and lead the Browns to a win. And to at least be fair to Shedeur, that's a very tall task for any NFL quarterback. But I really love the idea of the Browns taking Abdul Carter and pairing him opposite of Myles Garrett for the next few years.
That would be nasty,
a
bro.
lot of holes in the roster.
I would hate that as a Ravens fan, but I love to see it like 14 other games.
Get after quarterbacks in your division is a start to rebuilding this football team of what will be a multiple-year rebuild. But this is why the 2025 draft is so unique. They could easily draft Travis Hunter as well and play him both ways.
That nigga had 15 tuds.
That Travis Hunter said he's, quote, never playing football again, end quote, if he can't play both receiver and corner in the NFL.
We know damn well he can't.
Now, I think that's a little dramatic, but the point is, nobody would be surprised if he's the number 2 pick in the draft. And I do think we are at a point where the top 3 players in this class are solidified. It's just a matter of which order they go in. Meaning, I don't think there's a reality where the Patriots have a shot at either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. And because I think the top
they could trade down
Abdul Carter and
unless
Travis
they want to draft a tackle, which I highly expect them to do.
I think there's 5 players that are realistic for the Patriots.
Will Campbell or Armand Membu.
And they are in no order. Armand Membu, Will Campbell, depending how they view him, Teteroa McMillan, Ashton Genty, and this may be a surprising one, but Mason Graham. I know Mason Graham may be a surprise, but there's a
added more beef on that D-line, bro.
He was prior to being diagnosed with blood clots in July of 2024.
Oh, shit.
I, of course, wish Christian the best and hope everything works out as a human being first and foremost, but he was activated on November 16th of last year and played in 4 games, then on December 19th was placed on the reserve/non-football injury list due to recurring symptoms. With Drake May as the team's quarterback and with Mike Vrabel as the team's head coach,
Hope he
I
alright,
don't
bro.
think the Patriots will be selecting in the top 4 again for quite a while, and they won't have the chance to draft a player of Mason Graham's caliber for maybe the next several years. And I think there's merit to Mason Graham being selected at number 4 because we know how much Mike Vrabel loves and emphasizes the trenches, and that can also be applied to either Will Campbell or Armand Membu on the offensive side of the football too. Drake May did not stand a chance at times as a rookie, and I've expressed my concerns with the Patriots' offensive line several times this offseason, and I hope they go offensive line to give Drake May a fighting chance. But like we pointed out with the potential Mason Graham selection, Ashton Jeanty makes a lot of sense too because of how talented of a football player he is. And I can honestly say that as we sit here with a week to go to the 2025 draft, that really outside of the first overall pick,
nobody knows anything.
Now, there is a lot of belief that Mason Graham would be the selection for Jacksonville if he's available at pick 5, and it makes a lot of sense. Jacksonville has a need along the interior defensive line. Mason is a really good interior prospect, and when you pair the two, you have a marriage of Mason Graham going to Northern Florida. And then you also factor in that the new Jags general manager, James Gladstone, is coming over from the Los Angeles Rams, and over the past couple of years, James Gladstone has seen several defensive line players go to the Rams, and there's a reason they've had the success they've had over the past couple of years, whether it was Kobe Turner, whether it was Byron Young, or of course last year, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. All of this to say that Mason Graham going to the Jags makes a lot of sense, and there's a reason that if you open a mock draft, Mason Graham a lot of the time is the selection. But there is also a reality where they say, hey, we have a new head coach in Liam Cohen, we have
T-Mac.
Trevor Lawrence entering a very pivotal year because there's some people
They
that
could go
legitimately
T-Mac for
think
sure.
Trevor is a, not necessarily draft bust, but certainly a draft disappointment relative to the player that he was hyped up to be coming out of Clemson. So why not give him Tedero and McMillan and have the big 6'3" plus receivers in T-Mac and Brian Thomas Jr., or they also
That would
use
be
a tight end
nasty, bro.
and give them Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland. Although if the Jags do select a tight end in mock drafts, it is more often Tyler Warren than Colston Loveland. In the ultimate gun to your head scenario, I do think Mason Graham would be the selection as of today, and like we said, it makes a lot of sense for both sides. He can both get after the quarterback and help the run defense, and in the pass rush game, you would have a trio of Mason Graham, Josh Hines-Allen, and Trayvon Walker, and if you want to get out of your division and go to the divisional round of the
Now,
playoffs...
I did see an interesting one too where somebody had Jalen Walker mocked to the Jags. That would be hella interesting. I ain't gonna lie.
Well, it would certainly help to get after CJ Stroud with those guys and even Eric Armstead for the remainder of his time in Jacksonville, while also having to get after Cam Ward and Anthony Richardson for the time being. And I know AR has some questions right now, and so do the Colts for that matter, but Indy is really never a bad team. Yes, they had the bad season in 2022, but
They just
typically
need
they're anywhere from
good
7 to 9
QB
wins,
play,
and
bro.
they
That's
are
it.
not a bad football team. They're usually not a 2-15 or 3-14 team that is a cellar dweller picking in the top 5 of the draft. And if you want to get out of the AFC South, then you're going to have a combination of Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow waiting for you. So needless to say, in the AFC, if a team selects a pass rusher or a corner, as long as the value's there and we're not taking a third-round pass rusher in the top 10, I am all for it every single time. Now, for the Raiders at pick 6, as of now, I do think Ashton Jeanty would be the selection, and we know Pete Carroll loves to run the football. Now, every time you say Pete Carroll loves to run the football, there's always people that
And they
comment
got Chip
about
Kelly
Super Bowl
too, so.
49, and Seahawks fans, I do not intend to bring that up, but my point is, Pete's philosophy is about pounding the rock, running the football, and playing good defense.
If that was the
Ashton
case, they
Jeanty
would've had
would
another
certainly be an
ring, bro.
upgrade relative to what the 2024 Raiders fielded at the running back position.
They got a sledgehammer.
This is definitely not a
Thinking
normal
Triple
thing
H
to say in
game?
the pre-draft process, and it could
Time to
absolutely
play
come
the
back and
game.
bite me in the rear end. But
Looking
weirdly
at
enough,
it.
I am more confident at this specific moment in time that 5 and 6 will be Mason Graham and Ashton Jeanty, rather than 2 and 3 being in order of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. I feel more confident that Mason Graham is a Jag and Ashton Jeanty is a Raider right now than I do confidently saying Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter will be a Cleveland Brown. But the Jets are up at pick 7, and they are in an interesting situation because there's a couple of ways they could go. They have a good offensive line, and I know people love to get their jokes in about the Jets, and sometimes the jokes write themselves, and the 2024 season was not an ideal year even for the Jets and the standards.
Yeah, they haven't made the playoffs since like
But the
what,
Jets have a
2010.
really good offensive line from left to right, and if Armand Membu is available at pick 7, and if New England goes with Will Campbell or Tedero and McMillan, then the Jets could take who I think is the best offensive tackle in the draft in Membu. I know there is a lot of uncertainty between picks 2 through 4 in the 2025 draft, but I do think the Jets' choice at pick 7 is going to be a coin flip, and ultimately I think their choice will be between 4 players, 2 of which I think will be gone by this point. I think the 4 players that make the most sense for the Jets.
I think they go Membu because I really think Will Campbell gonna go to the Patriots, bro. Unless the Patriots like draft, well not draft, if they like trade back or something like that. That's the only way I could see Will Campbell getting to that spot. But other than that,
for Travis Hunter, of course,
I don't think
but
so.
The top 4 that I think for the Jets that are realistic would be Armand Membu, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, and Tetairoa McMillan. And that was in no order, by the way. Mason Graham next to Quinnen Williams would be a very fun defense, and it would be hell to block those guys for 60 minutes every single Sunday.
Along with Jermaine
Tetairoa
Johnson
McMillan
and Will
would, of course, make a
McDonald.
lot of sense to play opposite of Garrett Wilson, and Armand
Disgusting.
Membu and Will Campbell would effectively complete the Jets' offensive line. Any of those 4 would upgrade the Jets' current roster, and with a first-time GM on the clock in the top 7 of an NFL draft, I do think Darren Muji will effectively run the football, play it safe, and give the Jets a good football player. Now, we discussed the Panthers in a recent video that will be linked at the end regarding teams that can't miss during the 2025 draft, and Carolina is certainly one of them, but to me there's 2 realistic options for them at this point in time, and that's Tetairoa McMillan, the receiver from Arizona, and Mike Green, the edge from Marshall. Both players play at premium positions, and both are a big need for Carolina. But GM Dan Morgan recently said that they are willing to trade out of number 8 because there's a strong possibility the Saints draft Shedeur Sanders with a 9th pick due to the uncertainty around Derek Carr.
Yep.
I don't think there's
And
many
it's
teams that would
crazy,
select
like
the first-
all of a sudden everybody had, you know what I'm saying, Shedeur going to the Saints. I've been had that before I even saw anybody else's mock draft, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like that just made the most perfect sense. I didn't even know Derek Carr was even dealing with an injury. I just, you know what I'm saying, draft him for the future, but it's even more likely that he might become a Saint now, bro.
Shedeur in front of New Orleans, and I think really the only one that makes sense at this point in time is the Steelers, who currently have the 21st pick of the draft, and I don't think this makes a lot of sense for Pittsburgh to trade all the way up from pick 21 to pick 8 with Carolina, because I think Dan Morgan would basically say,
Damn, they only got 6 draft picks?
due to the DK Metcalf trade. I
tough,
know you're
bro.
desperate for a quarterback, so give us your 2026 first in addition to pick 21, and I don't think the Steelers would be willing to accept that trade. But one trade that I think does make sense for Carolina to entertain is the idea of a team trading up for Tyler Warren if he is still there at pick 8. I know there's a lot of rumors swirling around the Saints and Shedeur Sanders, but I'm not sold on the Saints tight end room of Juwan Johnson, even despite signing a contract extension this offseason, a 35-year-old Taysom Hill, and Foster Moreau,
Taysom Hill
who's been a
pushing
tight
40
end
now.
for his entire career. And we
I
mentioned
feel like he
earlier
can play
that in
till
a lot
he's
of ways,
50, to
the
be
draft,
honest.
or the uncertainty of the draft starts at number 4 overall with the Patriots, but I think there's a second window with that starting with what goes on with the Panthers at number 8. I personally would draft T-Mac and give my quarterback a solidified number 1 receiver of the future if he's there, but they only have 3 selections in the top 100 and 1 in the top 50, so there is a real chance Carolina entertains a trade back. I think New Orleans will ultimately stick and pick, whether that's Shedeur Sanders or a defensive lineman, or even another receiver for that matter. The reality is this team needs better football players, and because there's a lot of rumors about Sanders, or even the idea of them trying to upgrade the offensive talent on their roster, I don't think they will trade back in the draft, mainly because I don't think anyone would trade up unless Ashton Genty falls to pick 9, in which I think Jerry Jones would be on the phone trying to trade directly in front of Chicago. Part of the fun of the 2025 draft is the uncertainty in the first round relative to other years, but it's also combining that with how many general managers are selecting in the top 10 for the first time themselves. Mike Berganzi, James Gladstone, John Spytek, and Darren Muji are all first-time GMs selecting in the top 7 of the draft, and if there's one thing the newer generation of GMs and head coaches for that matter are not afraid to do, is roll the dice with analytics. What I mean by that is make a decision that may not seem the most popular at the time, but based on their internal decision making is what they think is the best action for the team. And because this draft does not have as many blue chip players the way the 2024 draft did, teams aren't going to be willing to trade up as much as normal years. I know we discussed the idea of the Carolina trade, but I would be surprised if there's more than one trade in the top 10 of the 2025 draft. And to me, outside of Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty, and Mason Graham, and maybe 1 or 2 others, there's not that much of a talent gap between player 10 and player 30 in this class like there has been in other years. And to go back to the uncertainty of this draft class, I think there will be several more perceived reaches than what we're normally used to. One part of the draft that happens every year is fans getting frustrated about taking a player that may not be the value of where they selected them, meaning if they think they drafted the 20th best player at the 12th overall pick, well, the reality is there may not have been a team willing to trade up, and obviously if they are the 20th best player in the class and they were selecting again somewhere in the early to mid 40s, that player would not have been there. And I think that's a very real scenario that could happen in the 2025 draft, and there's not many players that I think teams will trade up for. One team that I do think could get crazy within the first round is the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton is a really good offensive mind, one of the best ever. He's a Super Bowl champion head coach, and his offenses are routinely amongst the best. And there's a reason Bo Nix had 34 total touchdowns as a rookie and looks to be as an NFL quarterback. I could absolutely see him going to trade
34 is crazy
within the top 10. Maybe even a trade with his former team, the New Orleans Saints, at pick 9. There's also a lot of uncertainty around other players in the draft, and there are some positions that are more loaded than others. That happens every single year, and that's no different than with the 2025
running back
class.
and D-line is the most stacked positions in this draft class.
Process, and I completely understand why. It is thrown around far too often for such an impactful word, and I don't think there are any generational talents in the 2025 class. Travis Hunter is a bit of a unicorn because he plays both sides of the football at a high level, but I don't think he is a generational talent at either the receiver or corner position. But again, he's a unicorn, and that's a bit of a different discussion for a different day. However, I do not think it is an exaggeration to say this is a generational running back class. It is, of course, led by Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if both players had 12 or 1,300 rushing yards as a rookie and double-digit rushing touchdowns. Both players are going to be starting running backs from day one, as they should be, and they're
Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins,
really talented running backs
Caleb Johnson,
by the names of Travion Henderson,
Bashal
Judkins, Caleb Johnson, Damian Martinez,
could go on and on, bro.
RJ Harvey, and you get the point. It would not surprise me at all if we had a 1,000-yard running back selected in day 3 of the 2025 draft, meaning round 4 or beyond in their rookie season. I know Bucky Irving had a tremendous year for Tampa Bay last year, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if we had a Bucky Irving again.
He was my RB1 going into the draft last year.
The position is not the only loaded position group from
the Jonathan Brooks,
class, and I don't want to get comfortable throwing around the word generational, but this interior defensive line class is really good. Notice I didn't use the word generational, but it is really good. Whether it's Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, Talik Williams from Ohio State, Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, Darius Alexander from Toledo, of all places, you get the point. It is absolutely loaded. And for any team that needs a running back or an interior defensive lineman, specifically a nose tackle, as there's several good nose tackles within this class, like Alfred Collins from Texas, or Jordan Phillips from Maryland, or Jamari Caldwell from Oregon, there's a lot of players to be able to choose from really at any point within the 2025 draft. I think the best way to describe this class was what a GM said, is that it's a meat and potatoes class, and that we could see teams regularly from this draft get 2 or 3 or 4 starters and not bat an eye. There's not the Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., Joe Alt, or Brock Bowers in this class, but there are several great players all throughout, and I don't think there's that much of a talent difference between pick 30 and between pick 80 in this class like there normally is. I think there was a much bigger difference between the end of the first round in 2024 relative to the early to mid third round of the 2024 draft, because that draft was so loaded. And I'm not going to use the G word to describe the 2024 class, although I think it is kind of applicable for that draft. But the 2025 draft, in terms of a bell curve, is really loaded in the rounds 2 through 3, where 2024 was kind of a roller coaster, where it was absolutely loaded in round 1 and then kind of fell off a cliff. Now, there was a lot of players talented all throughout, and you get the point, but the meat and potatoes of this class is in rounds 2 through 4, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out, because there's a very real possibility that any of those guys that we think could be taken in rounds 2 through 4 are pushed way up the board, because other teams know that if they like them, other teams are going to like their guys too, and that could force a lot of reaches in the 2025 draft. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe. It's only about
that was quick as shit.
Watching are subscribed and helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.
Hey man, shit, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments for. Y'all let me know what other NFL videos you want me to react to. Without further ado, I'm out.
I'ma make them feel me, make them people when they chow me. And if you don't know me, I'ma make sure that you know me. I hate to say it, but I really think I'm broke. But I know I'm chosen, I really know I'm chosen. I know I'm chosen. I was just lost a year ago, but now I'm focused. When good at sports, this microphone can be my trophy. Not taking drugs, I found a better way of coping.